We got a Patreon, Ian.
We do. Patreon.com/CU podcast. You go, money, weekly writings.
Put another nickel in the Nickelodeon.
Put another nickel in the Nickelodeon. You get writings from me. I talked a little bit about my pinball tournament as well in writing this week.
And edibles.
I also...
Not the writing. The edibles.
The edibles was the intro. The intro. Gotcha. You get the full video podcast. You get hangouts. You get bonus bits. Bonus bits, and you get these polls.
So this was a close one. You got a 55-45 split. We've had closer. We had 50-50, but this is respectable. In second place, with PRGE returning, what do you expect to be the same, different 3 years later? 45%. Kind of surprised that one didn't win. People probably didn't know what PRGE meant. Poor Retro Gaming Expo. And in first place, 55%. The top NES games ranked. This is a listicle. One of Seth Abramson's, the lawyer, that has doing great work with retro lists and putting together different sources and combining them to try to come up with some academic way of saying these are the top NES games. We did the top worst games before. Here's the top NES games, and we will not start with number 1 first, Ian.
Nope, not this time.
We'll do the top 25 here. Tied for 24th, it's like the Olympics. Double Dragon 2: The Revenge and Mega Man 3.
Yeah, I think both of those are fantastic. Double Dragon 2 is probably maybe not the ultimate beat 'em up on the NES, but it's close. I mean, I would put it up there with River City Ransom.
It's probably the most famous one, Double Dragon 2.
And 2 is straightforward, unlike, River City Ransom, which has more story stuff.
RPG, yeah.
2 is great. It's 2 players, fixes that issue from part 1. Great controls, awesome control scheme where one button punches to your... One button is an attack to the left, the other is an attack to the right.
Punch forward, kick back.
And once you get used to it, it's very, very easy to use. It's a lot easier to take on groups of enemies in Double Dragon 2. It's a fantastic game. The only thing I don't like about it is sometimes it goes from the 3/4 view to like a side view, and they'll add platforming elements.
Yeah.
And platforming elements suck in Double Dragon games, in any beat 'em up on the NES, because they always make you use 2 buttons to jump. Yeah. And I get it. You need more buttons for attacks,
and the jumps aren't precise.
But there's no need to put platforming in a fucking beat 'em up.
The added platforming is miserable on the console versions. Let's just say on the NES one, it's miserable to jump off the ledge and try to hit the other ledge. It's miserable.
And then Mega Man 3 is a great game for sure.
This one surprised me. Number 22.
Blaster Master and Excitebike tied for 22.
Excitebike surprised me. Obviously, Excitebike is one of those games I always say, like, tell me 10 NES games. Someone will say Excitebike because it's like synonymous with the NES. It's a good game. It's a really good game. I'm just surprised it made the top list. That could be nostalgia in it, or the fact that, like I said, it's like one of the early games people played on the NES.
Excitebike almost always sold with with the purchase of a Nintendo. Yeah. It is a really fun game. When I was a kid, it was one of my favorites. As I've gotten older, I still like it. I think it's just it's solid. It's pick up and play, and it's not
intimidating.
Well, it's not intimidating, but there's also not a lot like it out there.
True. It's a racing game where you don't have to control the direction. You just change lanes, and you're just really controlling your jump.
And it's really just it's almost platforming when it gets harder, because you're figuring out how to navigate the obstacles in the fastest way possible.
You're right.
More so than racing.
It's like you have to land correctly to maintain your speed. No, you're right. It's like a platformer racer. That's interesting, Ian. Yeah, that's kind of about how they designed it. To be honest, because it's not a traditional racing game.
No, not at all. And then Blaster Master, that was one that a lot of people like, but I am a little surprised to see it on here. I'm
not surprised to see Blaster Master. That used to be always in the Nintendo Power top list. It was always up there.
Sure,
Blaster Master, and that's a game that I was a little experienced about. I'm ashamed of not playing much of Blaster Master. I'm ashamed of it.
This is an interesting one.
Tied for 20. Bionic Commando and Duck Hunt, the most 2 different games you could possibly get, which I think is funny.
So Bionic Commando is a great game. It's unique. It stood out as unique then. It still stands out as unique now.
4.5 stars, according to the NES Guidebook.
Eliminating jumping and using an interesting arm mechanic that can also help you block things,
attack enemies, grab items. Yeah,
fantastic game, very interesting.
Great music. We don't talk about the music enough.
Yeah, really good music.
Duck Hunt is again. It's like the excitement thing. It's like everyone plays Duck Hunt. It's beloved.
Excitebike is actually fun though. Duck Hunt has no depth and it's neat, but I can't tell you how many people
Well, this is what when I see these lists, this is what I always think. This is obviously a compilation of the list. These are people that don't know the depth of the NES library. They know like 40 to 50 NES games. They don't know the hundreds and hundreds of NES games in order to draw from. In order to be like, okay, because if you knew the entire library, Duck Hunt's not making top 25.
Sure.
It might make top 100, 150. It's not making the top 25.
Sure. So
keep that in mind when you go through this. People are going to be like, wow, what about this game? What about this game? I mean hell, I don't know, Danny Sullivan's Indie Heat is better than Duck Hunt, people could say, randomly. Okay.
19,
next.
Kid Icarus.
Sure, it wouldn't make my top 25, but people love it.
It's one of my favorites. It's hard as hell. Everyone loves playing the first world. No one loves playing anything after
exactly.
that.
That's why I'm like, yeah, it's a little uneven.
But no, I get it. And I mean, I loved that game as a kid.
Tied for 17.
River City Ransom and Batman. Both good choices. River City Ransom, I think, beats out Double Dragon 2 just a bit. If you want to beat 'em up with meat, one that you're not just going to play through and be done with. That's really fun. Lots of secrets in it. Batman is one of the better licensed games out there. Sure. Again, has fantastic music. It was by Sunsoft and really nice graphics. The game is brutal to play. I mean, it gets really hard really quick.
Oh, absolutely. That's a tough game to get through.
Yep.
But it's a brilliant game from Sunsoft. Good old Sunsoft. 16 place. Ian, your
Zelda
favorite.
2. Love it. Not going to argue with it. I would have it higher, but I realize that it's a weird game for a lot of people.
I think it's a weird game for a lot of people. It's weird for people that have their definition of Zelda games. They don't like how this one doesn't fit into it. But no, there's always a top NES game, Zelda 2. Number 15, Tetris, and this is the Nintendo published version.
Yes.
According to it, most people voted for the Nintendo one versus the Tengen one. Classic puzzle game. For most people, it's the definitive version for them.
It's the competitive version.
It's competitive. I understand it. It has the music people love. It has the color scheme people like. No two players to me kills this one to me. The fact that it doesn't have two players on the NES, that to me kills it. But I understand for a lot of people, it's their all-time favorite version of the game,
yes.
and it's one of the best, if not the most popular puzzle game ever. So I get that. Number 14, my favorite of the trilogy, Super Mario Brothers 2, is up there. Great place for it. For most people, it's not the best one, but it gets the respect it deserves.
Yep.
It's a brilliant game. It's lovely. I love playing through that game. Ninja Gaiden number 13, that's always a strong one on these lists. It's classic.
Yeah, it's again, a lot of these games. This is like looking at this list is like looking at the starter pack of games that people buy when they get a Nintendo for the first time after having one, not having one for years.
This is seriously like looking at Nintendo Power do their top 30 NES games every month, and like most of these would be in one form or another. Yep. No Festra's Quest though, because that would always make the list sometime. Nintendo Power, they loved it back then.
Yep. Tied for 10th, Castlevania 3.
Skipped one.
And DuckTales.
You skipped 12.
Oh, sorry, 12. Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. Yes.
Great RPG. 10, Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, and DuckTales. DuckTales absolutely deserves to be in the top 10. Great music, great adaptation of a property that made sense. Konami firing on all four cylinders, an interesting attack mechanic. Did I say fantastic music? One of the best soundtracks on the Nintendo. And kind of like an early... what I loved about DuckTales when I played it for the first time as a kid was the levels were full of secrets. So many of the levels have multiple ways you can get through them. And as a kid, it was great to have that ability to kind of explore. It's a very exploratory game. It's very different from... linear, straightforward platformers.
And the pogo is original mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fun.
And Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse is fantastic. Multiple playable characters. It's also incredibly difficult.
One of the most complex NES games, too. There, in terms of the effects, the MMC...
Oh, if you play the Famicom version, 3? It's crazy.
It's MMC 3 game.
Yeah.
Dracula's not 5.
Oh, okay.
Is it 5?
I think it's 5.
Yeah, which not many games were. And so you got some extra effects. That's why you got like the background stuff, extra things.
Yeah.
This one surprised me that it nudged it ahead. Castlevania got 9 ahead of 3. You don't hear that a lot. I thought Castlevania would definitely make the top 25. I'm surprised it got this high on it. Obviously, it's outstanding. It laid the groundwork for obviously 3. 2 will never make these lists, by the way. It's always 1 and 3.
Sure.
And I'm surprised to see that. Were you surprised to see that a little bit higher?
Yeah, I was, but I think it's just because more people probably know it. Again,
Sure.
if we're talking to people who don't have an understanding of the depth of the library, it's probably just going to be. I bet you a lot of people maybe voted for Castlevania and they were thinking part 2 or part 3. It's just whatever they knew.
Kirby's Adventure, number 8.
So good. Another one of the late complex games on the NES.
That was MC3, I believe.
Just absolutely gorgeous. I mean, there is no other game that I can think of on the NES that looks almost as good as that. Gimmick. I think Gimmick and Kirby share a lot in terms of their design, and they're similar in terms of their style.
The closest games that sort of bridge the gap to this almost look 16-bit. You're getting like close.
Yes.
Maybe in the detail, if not in the color and detail, sort of go hand in hand. But like,
you don't get the shading and whatnot, but the
design,
breadth of color and the design, it really does look like a game in between the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo.
They get the most out of it with the combined design with the characters and the size of the characters in those 2 games.
Let me put it this way: when I got Kirby's Adventure, I was not upset that I did not have a Super Nintendo. I'm like, oh, I'm still playing fucking great games on the Nintendo.
Yeah, those last couple years of games, they got the most out of all those Taito games we always talk about that they didn't do print runs of. Like, they got the most out of it. That's the thing about the chipsets, the different chips in the cart. You can do things that you couldn't do several years before.
I love the weird ending of Kirby's Adventure. Kirby's Adventure is a magnificent fucking game. Did I give that 5 or did I give it 4.5?
You better have given it 5 after the BJ you just gave it.
Yeah.
You better. Metroid, number 7.
Yeah, love Metroid.
Surprised it's that high, but I think because of the reputation.
I think it's more reputation and what came after than the specific game itself. But the original Nintendo Metroid is still a lot of fun.
It's amazing for the time.
Play it with a guide if you don't want to get completely, flustered and lost, but it's a great game.
Number 6, Super Mario Brothers. That's exactly where it should be. Even a little bit higher, I would not mind that. I think people... They don't take for granted the original Super Mario Bros., but I think the fact that people always say, well, 2 or 3, or especially 3, it's like, 1 is amazing. The controls...
Oh, it's so fun.
The controls in 1 are incredible.
It's so much fun.
For right out of the gate, the controls are absolutely perfect. They're perfect. They kind of try to improve a little bit on Super Mario 35 in order to build in more things. We're jumping on multiple objects at the same time and things like that. But it's a perfect game. To me, it is.
Yeah.
Then next, Mega Man 2. People say that's the best one.
It's my favorite.
I'll take your word for it.
It's my favorite. I think Mega Man 2 was this weird game because it's a little bit easier than the first one, and then 3 starts to get difficult again. It's not an easy game, but even if you play, it was one of the only ones I can think of that has 2 modes. There's an easy mode and a hard mode, and even the hard mode's not so bad on Mega Man 2. If you can play it and learn it. I think it's a wonderful game. I think it's probably the best Mega Man soundtrack. So yeah, Mega Man 2 is great. Before they added the charge shot and the slide.
You think that ruined the design a little bit? I think the slide ruined the design.
I don't think either of them ruin it, but I don't miss them when I play games that don't have it. Because I think it was it 9? No, I think it was 10. I think it was Mega Man 10 that eliminated the slide and the charge shot.
And it felt...
And I didn't miss it.
Yeah.
I didn't miss it.
I think it breaks the design when then you're relying on the sliding all around real quick to get away from everything. It's like, well, it's a little bit too much, to me. I'm not a Mega Man expert out there. Number 4, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Yeah, great game.
Amazing
game.
Surprised it gets that high on these lists, but again, that's one of the most famous NES games. Again, that's like Excitebike. It's like, just tell me 10 NES games, you're going to say Excitebike, you're going to say Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. It's going to be in there. What's so amazing about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, besides the fact that it's like the first big license they got on the system in '87. It's like the first big one they got. And the fact that it was Mike Tyson, who was a phenom in '87. Mike was like 20 years old or 21 when this game came out. He was super young.
Oh God, really? He was that young?
He won the title when he was like 19.
Yeah,
1920. And back in '85. So like Mike Tyson, if you weren't around, like he was a phenomenon. He was like the most famous people on the planet for like a good four or 5 years before he lost the title in early '91, whatever it was. But when you played Mike Tyson's Punch-Out the first time, and I think I got it in '88, spring of '88, because it came out in '87, later '87. Seeing those characters be that big,
yes,
you still have the color restraints, but like the big characters in the detail, and you're fighting against them. There was nothing like it on the console, and I'm very hard pressed to find a game afterwards that was like that with characters that big. I mean, you had some boxing games, but like full guys that you're dodging against, and yeah, it's more of a dodging and reaction game and pattern than a
some memorization game.
But yeah, that deserves to be top 10. It's a brilliant game. Contra number 3. Kind of surprised it got that high. Not complaining because Contra is one of my all-time favorite NES games, if not all-time favorite games. Are you surprised to see it that high? I'm just. It's a brilliant game. I'm just surprised.
No, I'm not. I'm not surprised. I mean, very few of these surprised me, other than honestly, Duck Hunt kind of surprised me.
Well, Castlevania just surprised me it got that high.
Sure,
that's all. On that. So tied for one. Here's the controversy. People can tie for number 1. Super Mario Brothers 3 and The Legend of Zelda, Ian's favorite game.
For me, I look, as much as I complain about the original Legend of Zelda, I understand why it would get so high. I think Super Mario Brothers 3 would be the one that takes number 1 for me. I fucking love Super Mario 3.
Traditionally, people say best NES game. The people that say, "Oh, just say Super Mario Bros. 3." I don't think when you look at The Legend of Zelda. Again, I'm going to go back to I had Nintendo Powers for years. Legend of Zelda was always in their top like 5 of like they do like the counselor's favorite games, the players picks, and then they did like the weird like stores pick or dealers pick. Legend of Zelda sold extremely well for several years.
Yeah,
it was always they reissued it. It was one of the 3 or 4 games they reissued it with. They did the Punch Out classic version with Mr. Dream. They did Zelda 2. They did Legend of Zelda, and Metroid. They did the release of Metroid. People are going to say, "Oh, they did Blades of Steel re-release." I know for some reason Konami rebranded it. Legend of Zelda. If I had to put a gun to my head, I would say Legend of Zelda. Obviously, you can't complain about Super Mario 3. It's a masterpiece of platformers. People could say that might be the pinnacle platform of all time to some people. I say Super Mario World, but you can make a case for 3.
I literally have gone back and forth between the two multiple times over my life. It's honestly just which one I think I played most recently.
I mean, World obviously has the benefit of being a 16-bit system and on Yoshi. I mean, World to me, you can't get better than a platformer than World. I just enjoy it a lot more than Super Mario Bros. 3.
Sure.
That's all. I think the especially getting towards the end, I think the
end game of Super Mario World is better than the end game of Mario 3.
Yes,
World 8 in Mario 3 is a fucking nightmare.
It's dreadful.
Yeah,
and it's too samey. Oh, here's another fortress. Here's the fun. It's too samey with, okay, we'll just go slowly and scroll until
I like that stuff. It's actually not that stuff that I don't like. Okay. It's the like 2 actual levels that they have that are weird, and I hate the mid boss castle in World 8 and Mario 3.
I don't remember that being that
just
bad.
A fucking maze.
Oh yeah, the maze and stuff. But still. Great list. Is there anything that you thought should have made this that did not? Obviously, we're talking about mostly publications and websites that, again, they don't know that they don't have the knowledge of me and Ian. Like they're going to say, like, I'll say, oh, where the hell is Tecmo Super Bowl? There's like not sports games. There's no sports games on here if you don't count Mike Tyson's Punch Out, or Excitebike for racing. There's no sports game, which I thought kind of weird.
No, I mean, my top 25 would look different, but I don't see anything up here that immediately needs like. I like Gun Knack a lot. I'd throw a shooter on there because that's a really good shooter.
Okay.
Probably throw in there.
I would have put Tecmo Super Bowl on here.
Yeah, you'd probably get Tecmo Super Bowl from me.
Or Baseball Stars, but people don't know about Baseball Stars. But Tecmo Super Bowl people know about. They still hack it every year today and play it. So, I mean, with updated rosters.
I think Kung Fu is really good, too. I think I give
it 4.5 stars.
Honestly, if you want to talk about it, I would say get rid of Duck Hunt and put Kung Fu on here. You would need people with a better knowledge of the library. But if we're gonna put some black box games on here, Kung Fu is. I would pick Kung Fu and Excitebike as the 2 best. I mean, they're just snappy and they're fun and
not counting Super Mario Bros. As a black box.
Yeah. I think they're great games.
Kung Fu. You go back and play the NES Kung Fu, and even though it's a short game, that's a stellar experience.
No, it's great.
Arcade experience.
It's great.
It's better than.
And then go ahead and loop it and see if you can loop it.
Loop it a few times.
It's a great game.
It's stellar. Because I was still in the arcade.
And that's IREM. I mean, that's one of IREM's early games. I mean, I love a lot of the shit that IREM did. But yeah, Kung Fu is one of their best.
Yes, great. Well, thank you for the list there, Seth. I appreciate we do this every now and then. We pull them out here.